Hello YouTube, my name is Iriseon, and I play video games. And I make videos about playing video games, and I'm also YouTube scum. Ew, gross. And from where I sit, all this stuff is hearsay. Hearsay? Heresy? I mean, after watching the Huffington Post live debate for Gamergate, it's obvious that all these angry, divisive, reactionary, ad hominem, non-inclusive, spiteful, sneering articles from games journalists decrying the term gamer as identity managed to produce the same response back. Sneering, spitefulness, and it's equally obvious that the term gamer had more reach and identity than the game journalists would have liked. I mean, this same supposed enthusiast press went and smeared its enthusiasts because they were having a fight with 4chan and Reddit, more or less. Major games media members overreacted to the scope of interest in the Zoe post debacle, and they tarnished their explicitly gamer audiences as horrible. I mean, it's one thing to have a debate about toxic trash talking in games, and it's another to talk about negative trolls on internet forums and comment sections and trying to change the way we talk on the internet. And it's quite another thing to say, we hate everyone in this hobby and we need to replace them. I mean, this is the message that you get. An extremist, you go or we take you out, shotgun blast of articles. A cohesive wall of silence. Mind you, when the major theme accompanying many articles and forums was to erase or disable the comment section to stop debate. You suck. Deal with it and shut up. Oh yeah? A cohesive wall? But was it coordinated? Was it collusion? I mean, is that even so bad? Yes, yes, and yes. I mean, it just appears that the echo chamber of daily interaction within the games journalists produced competing websites offering the same product, message, and ideology. It's like you're not even competing. I mean, this wouldn't be as big a revolt if these game journalism websites weren't some of the biggest, conveniently attached to the Steam games in your libraries as regular press, and fed up through IRS or RSS feeds and wired down and amplified around on traditional media. These are the people called as game journalism guests to panels, events, and TV shows and radio, and they're our mass media representatives. I mean, these are the people who go on shows to guide public opinion about games and gamers. This is our corrupt games journalism media, who regurgitate PR releases and devour swag bags and booze, and then are assigned the job to gauge a product and give them a score from their own arbitrary scoring system, borrowed, slightly from movie reviewers' methods. Is that view of game journalists too simple, too critical, too antagonistic, too hyperbolic? I mean, yes, but then so were the slew of articles all attacking gamers on the same day. Just think, imagine you're someone who likes video games, and you go browse the internet to see when the next, Sims patch is coming out, or what's the new game that everyone's talking about, or I get stuck trying to solve a puzzle. And you go to Google, and you look, and then up pops major ranks games media sites, and there, bam, results 1, 2, 3, and 4. All these websites devoted to this hobby, demeaning the hobbyists. They aren't gamers, they're misogynists. Gamers are over. They aren't developers' audience, and they aren't games media audience. Heterosexual people and men are too prevalent. White people are too prevalent. We want to change this right now. We cannot wait, says the game media, with just one loud voice. We want you to know that you all hate women, so we hate you. What is this? Suddenly there's a drive for everyone to prove how inclusive they are with everyone, except for, this sheet of people we don't like, and, oh yeah, you'll need a VIP pass to get in here. No comment. Divide and conquer. I don't know why. They've chopped people into groups to separate them and drive a wedge to start a war. I mean, games media continues to try and signal boost Zoe Quinn and force this into the debate about feminism and misogyny. She has plenty of angry freaking trolls, but that's not what you do. You don't call, if you have trolls, you don't call everyone a troll. I mean, Gamergate is just going to keep happening larger and larger because the increasing collateral damage. It's a strident war of hyperbole and hysteria. I mean, games media has taught its pupils well. How to write on the internet for garnering ad revenue, propping up screeching hype, and generally the techniques of clickbaiting. Game writing has now been learned by the masses, Mass Effect style. I mean, there should be a wider discussion about the ways language trends towards hyperbole. so people get noticed in debates. They want to make a bigger emotional stamp and get noticed, and the way comment sections and articles are framed for attention. I mean, like, just think of how people write Facebook posts and tweets and just larger culture throughout history using overwrought vocabulary to make a point. People just tend to do that. That's a discussion for another day, though. I don't know. Gamergate might have been started by the hashtag might have been started by a rabidly political actor because of a crapstorm brewing about a women dev who was giving and receiving abuse in her own sphere of internet. But I mean, the games media response to this has blown everything wide open. Games media insisted on painting its viewership with a wide, negative, stereotypical brush, and a brush fire grew into a blaze. They got people who would never have heard of this debacle out and up and aware. I mean, the political narratives underneath this tone of social justice warriors versus men's right activists, of liberals versus conservatives, is a sideshow. I mean, these political narratives will be fought forever, everywhere. But Gamergate would have never been this large hydra if it weren't for those hateful swath of articles. This is what it's about now. Opinion pieces, think pieces, alternative perspectives are all generally welcome. But a negative echo chamber like this is an abrupt stop to the carnival ride. Those of us who have been playing games for a long time have always known about PR relationships and how this media is very driven by articles and ads and just, I mean, from Nintendo Power's generally happy coverage of everything to, the thick PC Gamer holiday editions. They're crammed with advertisements, but also had interesting writing. None of us are really surprised at the modern day Dorito Pope, just at how very blatant it is today. And the video games awards themselves are a crass spectacle of just cringe. Way more about brands cramming themselves in consumer minds than presenting like artistic niche awards or just artistic awards to entertaining art. These aren't being critiqued, they're just branding. Gamers are bombarded with advertising and cross-promotional schemes and just hype. We know the games media are generally lazy, weak, pathetic PR shills. I in particular thought that a niche site like Rock Paper Shotgun was interesting for covering indie games. But now even there's questionable activity going on concerning favorability and corruption in independent games awards, especially when they award money to companies they are investing in, and when games journalists even cover games by people they live with without any disclaimer or attempt at transparency. These guys are the gatekeepers for independent small games developers. Gamer gatekeepers. This sort of like quid pro quo going on in major publishers should not even be emulated by indie devs, and it would be atrocious if this is how the games media expects to continue to do business and choose winners and losers. How they choose to give access. And there's a problem when all the major games media members are centered in one place, San Francisco. You're all friends, you're all fed by big publishers, all working together to advance identical narratives. There just needs to be more diverse voices in the major games media. They're not just given the small bit of choice at smaller venues, which don't get featured on Steam or jetted around to events. I mean, surprisingly, one of the biggest problems in this, Kotaku seems to be making strides toward giving better coverage. When Steven Totillo announced that their new stance going forward is to try to give continuing coverage of gaming communities away from the money-mangled maw of the hype machine. He's going to stop doing a lot of the PR events and focusing more on games after they've been out, communities. Think of like Daisy. You don't say like Daisy, well, whatever. It's a continuing narrative about communities instead of just the PR people. Escapist, too, is one of the first to jump up and actually draft a code of conduct. Many old game review sites took the time to write review score documents in the past here and there, like trying to give weight to their scores, like, oh, this is why we score X and Y, Z. But they never did seem to care around to get, to actual traditional ethics. No real clause there. The gaming industry has grown to the point where professionals now need to be professional and stop pointing to amateurs as an excuse for their own bad behavior. Like, oh, well, that site doesn't care and they take swag and they... No, some might say we should get numbered reviews out of gaming. Get Metacritic out. Publishers press hard on journalists to give better reviews, and they'll hinge a game developer's bonuses on Metacritic, so numbered reviews have to go. No. I mean, now more than ever, people want choice. We want to be able to glance at reviews just like you can glance at a movie review and see, 3 out of 5 stars. And then if you're really interested, you'll go and read the meat of the article, or watch the video, or listen to the podcast. Now more than ever, review sites need to write better reviews all around, and strive to be the gold standard in reviewing. Who cares if someone comes up and says, I don't agree with your review? Deal with it. You're better than them. You should have reasons behind your review. You should have your writing right there to back it. And then, when you want to write an editorial on the side, do it. Write opinion pieces about diversity, and gender, and race, and creed in games. Produce segments on diversity of control. How about diversity of perspective, and player agency, and environment, and aesthetics? Anything. You should strive to cover more, and be less whiny and toxic. I hear so many games journalists say they're tired now. What? Some people, no one wants to hear a whiner for too long, and the games press just looks it. All this muckraking, clickbaiting, Gawker-style blogging is not how the whole games media industry should go. You should continue to exist. Some are going to continue to exist as more progressively bent games news sites. That's their jam. They put social justice on their toast. And they will strive or barely survive depending on how well they treat their followers. But other ones, a lot of these sites should really look to aim higher. Be more inclusive. Be more imaginative. Someone should try to be aim to be more respected than Famitsu at reviews. And others should try to produce video segments as good or better than game trailers. And others should try to talk to more programmers and artists and writers in the industry for more personal looks behind the scenes of games making. And others should go look at the scenes of people playing games. But this hysterical clickbaiting ridiculousness everywhere is not how games journalism industry should look as a whole. Don't be a whole a-hole in one opinion. That stinks. I guess also what we need is a serious discussion of how to mitigate threats and harassment online. This should have no place here. And how to have polite ideological discussions about common ground. And games journalism really needs to get on discussions about views that credibly challenge some of the cherry-picking and out-of-context twisted logic of the tropes versus women series. The more that you avoid that, the worse it gets. The more games media continues to demean, silence, and belittle the consumer base, the more this fire spreads and doesn't get contained. The more people who refuse to have adult conversations, the more childish the arguments become. Games media needs to seriously examine all issues and act like they are the media for games culture as well as for game publishers. You need to cover more, with more vitality and with more depth. Please do try to think of yourselves as professionals with a mission to critique and examine modern popular art. Please try to elevate the discussion instead of having petulant fights and silencing of dissent. Please stop writing for the lowest common denominator and try to separate the way you talk in games with the way you talk in your publications. Put on your journalist hat and write as if you were fresh in the industry again, glad to be here, not brain damaged by years of social media exchanges, not worn down and just regurgitating press releases, and just cribbing off your friends, looking to see what they're writing, and then echo chambering it out. Then go relax and put on your normal hat and play some TF2 and trash talk or do whatever you want to do and fight for causes and this and that. But it never had to be this way. Now game journalists have forced this story into a realm ripe for trolls, harassers, and now traditional mainstream media is going to jump in and pile on your consumers again. This attempt to create a rift really worked. Now what will you do to mend it? Go the other way. Get scared and go that way. Go into my shit.